All righty, welcome back to another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today is Friday, January 6th, and we are talking about recruiting. As we hinted to on the last video, at the end of the video, I mentioned we're probably going to be covering recruiting, and we are. I mean, there's plenty of content, plenty of recruits that are being targeted by OU and targeted by other schools. Kids are committing. Oklahoma picked up a commit on Thursday that we're going to be talking about. Dylan Gabriel's coming back. And then Oklahoma is targeting some wide receivers, some big time wide receivers in the transfer portal. And they seem determined to take a wide receiver. At first, I wasn't really sure that they would in the transfer portal, but they are gung ho on it. And I'm here for it, especially if Marvin Mims does officially decide to come back, which I believe he will, and we can talk about that when we start talking about the wide receivers. So before we get into it, just want to say we appreciate it. We're over 5,500 subscribers. I think we're like 60 away from 5,600. If you're new here or if you've been here often, hit the subscribe button. It's free and easy. Turn the notification bell on so you know whenever we post. And then follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. Be sure to leave us a review on Apple or Spotify if you're listening to us, or even if you aren't listening to us, you're watching on YouTube. If you could just go on Spotify and hit the follow button or Apple and then leave us a review, helps us on there as well. And it takes just a few minutes to do so. All right. So today's video, we're going to start off with Dylan Gabriel announcing that he will be returning for the 2023 season. As I'm talking about this, I'm sure someone's commenting like, oh my gosh, why is he coming back? I can't believe it, yada, yada, yada. Personally, I am not shocked and this was expected, and I am personally happy. What do you think?
I agree. I know that there's a portion of the fan base that thinks he is the worst thing that ever happened to Oklahoma, but I think that just shows how good the quarterback play has been with Lincoln Riley. I mean, you go from Baker Mayfield, a Heisman finalist and Heisman winner, to Kyler Murray, a Heisman winner, to Jalen Hurts, a Heisman finalist, Spencer Rattler, a Heisman favorite. I think really quickly got moved on to Caleb Williams, who's now a Heisman winner. Like the quarterback play has been unreal, but if we look before Baker Mayfield, it was kind of average. Being honest, Trevor Knight was not very good. He was okay, but not amazing. Dylan Gabriel would have started over him. Landry Jones, he was good. I think you can make an argument for who would have played over who, but Dylan Gabriel is a good quarterback. Is he amazing? I'm not going to say that. There's definitely better out there, but he can do it. He can be good, and his stats were actually pretty solid. I think he was towards the top of the conference in quarterback statistics. Texas fans like to pretend like Quinn Ewers was just night and day better than Dylan Gabriel, but really his stats were significantly worse. And Dylan Gabriel threw more yards, more touchdowns, and I'm pretty sure he threw less picks. So he's a good quarterback. Now, did he shrink in big moments? Yes, but new school, a kind of a new system. I know that was a big thing that we were all excited about coming into the year, where he'd be familiar with Lebby, but it had been 2 years, 3 years since he had played under Lebby's offensive scheme. So getting readjusted, new teammates, it is a higher level of competition. I think Dylan can be a quarterback that wins at Oklahoma. We'll just have to see what happens around him as well. Because, like you said, we are still waiting on Marvin Mims' confirmation if he's returning or if he's going to go to the NFL draft. If he returns, I think that Oklahoma's on the right path to, maybe competing for a Big 12 championship, or at least being on that cusp where we need to win the last two games to be in that Big 12 championship conversation. There was just a lot of bad situations. I mean, he got hurt for a game and a half, got hurt in the TCU game, missed the entire Texas game. Quick two drops. I mean, literally could have had anyone out there. You could have had a 10-year-old play quarterback versus Texas, and it would have been the exact same result as Davis Bevel. It was god awful. And then you did have a lot of drops, and that's not on Dylan Gabriel. That's on the wide receiver. I know he was not the most accurate quarterback. He did overthrow or underthrow some guys early on in the season, but his overall completion percentage was pretty good. I'm pretty sure he was in like 61 or 62. So nothing amazing, but nothing where you'd be like, all right, this guy just can't hit anyone. He can't hit the ocean with the ball. Like he's good enough. Others will probably start saying that it should be Jackson Arnold time, but I've been on the train. There was a little bit through that in the season where I said maybe Jackson Arnold can be the starter day one. I just don't think realistically that is going to happen because most freshman quarterback don't have immediate success. And I can already tell right now someone in the comment section or the chat saying, well, look at Caleb Williams. Well, yeah, Caleb Williams wasn't expected to be a starter because he was right behind. He was sitting behind another 5-star quarterback. And it just happened that Lincoln Riley didn't really like Spencer Rattler. I think at this point, it's kind of a fair thing to say because he benched him 3 times in his 2 years at Oklahoma. Lincoln seemed to be looking for a reason to not use Spencer Rattler for whatever reason. Spencer Rattler is a good quarterback. He just got overtaken by Caleb Williams, who is a special talent. A guy like that does not come out in every single recruiting class. And Trevor Lawrence wasn't that guy. I think the last guy you can point to and be like, he's kind of Caleb Williams transformative for a program is Andrew Luck. And it's been over a decade since he was in college. Like, it's really not a thing that happens often. So Jackson Arnold will be a really good QB2. If he has a chance to be QB1 at some point due to an injury, it would be hard for him depending on how he does and like how he matures in the system throughout the next 8 to 9 months. Could he, overtake that QB1 spot? Possibly. I do not think that freshman quarterback will be the program savior that everyone expects Jackson Arnold to be. Or a lot, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people do.
Oh, I definitely agree. I mean, is there a world where halfway through the season Dylan Gabriel's struggling and they decide to give Jackson Arnold a run at it? Potentially. But I don't see Gabriel having the issues and the inconsistencies that he had last year. I don't really see that happening next year. It's tough to be perfect. You can never be perfect when you play quarterback. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to overthrow. You're going to throw a pick here and there. It's just the nature of the beast when you're playing at the Power 5 level. He accounted for passing and throwing. He accounted for just shy of 3,500 yards and 31 touchdowns with just 6 picks. He scored a lot of touchdowns, not enough, maybe not as much as we were hoping it to be. I mean, he still accounted for 31 touchdowns. Like he said, there were drops. I mean, I can think of Marvin Mims, multiple drops from Mims. There were some overthrows, some underthrows. If those balls would have been caught, he would have had over 30 passing touchdowns, probably 3 or 4 more wins, and we wouldn't even be talking about this. Literally just a handful of plays. And I think Drum talked about it. Like I think there were 7 touchdowns that were dropped or called back by penalty in these games that they lost. That if they hadn't, if they gone the other way, Oklahoma probably would have won. And then both Mims and Dylan Gabriel's stats look significantly better. So you get that cleaned up. I think Mims comes back. I don't have any information as to one way or another. I think Mims comes back. I think he tries to improve his draft stock. I see him being able, if he has a really good year next year, he could be a day 2 type of guy, like a second round pick, high third. I don't know if he goes that high right now. I mean, while statistically he had his best year, he had some inconsistency with drops. So I think if I were in his corner, his friends, his family, giving him advice, just, from the couch, I guess, I think one more year, has a great year, puts up 1,400 yards. He's a second round pick, maybe even a late first if a team really needs a speedster. So I'm excited for Dylan Gabriel. The ideal scenario for me is he plays at an extremely high level. Jackson Arnold redshirts. Then we have Jackson Arnold for 4 years of eligibility with already 1 year in the system. And that system he's already familiar with. So I'm excited that Gabriel's coming back. I am not shocked. I mean, there was no way he was going to enter in the portal because he was going to have to learn a whole new system. And so you give him a year. He's recruiting some guys. I'm sure he's putting his recruiting hat on these transfer kids because he wants to win. And I mean, he didn't transfer to Oklahoma to go 6-7 at the end of the day, but that's just what happened. And with this class that they're putting together, the transfer class, the class from last year getting more playing time, older guys graduating, this team's going to be significantly better. Are they winning a national championship? Probably not, but they'll probably win 10 games next year. And probably play for the Big 12 title. Whether they win it or not, I don't know, but they're going to have an opportunity to do so. So I'm excited. I know some people aren't, but if Dylan Gabriel plays at a high level next fall, all this will go out the window and everyone will forget and everyone will be excited that he's here.
I agree. And something that I was actually thinking about when I saw Dylan's post, and there was people on both sides of the argument where some were saying that he was terrible and others were saying that they were glad he was back. Remind me a little bit of Hendon Hooker. I'm trying to remember what Tennessee's record was before this year, but Hendon Hooker, as an individual quarterback, had a good year before this last year and getting hurt. He had 2,900 passing yards, 2,945 passing yards, 31 touchdowns, and 3 picks. Now Dylan threw more yards, but Hendon threw more touchdowns and less picks. Like you said, there were some drop touchdowns. I'm sure Hendon had some drop touchdowns, but look how much 1 year made a difference for Hendon Hooker and having continuity and being a starter for Tennessee. Dylan Gabriel, I mean, these kind of things don't happen every single year, but he could be the kind of the dark horse guy that just needed to have some continuity with his OC, some wide receivers, the system, the school he's at, and move forward and elevate his play. Well, I'm not going to sit here and predict he's going to be a Heisman finalist. Hendon Hooker should have been a Heisman finalist, in my opinion. I'm not going to sit here and say Dylan Gabriel is going to be a Heisman finalist next year, but he's going to be pretty darn good as an individual quarterback. We'll just have to see what, like you said, what happens around him. Because Marvin Mims leaving, I think, could be something that could set the offense back, because we don't know what is really sitting behind him. And we know Joe Farouk will be elevated to that wide receiver one. Drake Soups will still be there. Is Jaden Gibson the one that's going to step up? Is Nick Anderson going to step up? Will it be a transfer? One of these guys we're going to talk about that'll take that role and try to be the number one or number two wide receiver. That would be the questions we would need answered before saying, all right, Dylan Gabriel is for sure going to take this team to the next level and hopefully play for a New Year's Six Bowl.
New Year's Six Bowl, and you know what? It's not unreasonable. I mean, it's unreasonable, but I mean, there is a world where they win the Big 12 and they're competing for a playoff spot, and they could slide in the fourth spot. I mean, the fourth spot, TCU probably isn't going to be the same team considering all the seniors and guys that will graduate and go to the NFL from that team. OU's going to have an opportunity to win the Big 12. I mean, obviously, we saw what USC looked like. They're going to have an opportunity. So, and I don't see next year two Big 10 schools getting in, because I think Ohio State's going to run them out and win, because I think Jim Harbaugh is gone from Michigan. So I think Michigan's going to fall quick.
Quick, going back to what I was saying with Hendon Hooker, the year before last, so 2021 season, Tennessee was 3-6, or not 3-6, 7-6 for the season. I mean, I know that they're 2 wins better than Oklahoma, or 1 win better than Oklahoma right now in the regular season, but it's possible that he could elevate the team to go to that Hendon Hooker, like with Tennessee this last year. Could be that kind of elevation for Dylan Gabriel in Oklahoma.
And it's not all on him either, because you bring in these transfers, the defense plays better. You bring in the 22 class, he will have better talent on the defense to help elevate this team. So it's not just him, but I do agree that he has to elevate this team, but he needs a little bit of a better supporting cast. And I think that's what's happening with this team. So it could be a combination between the entire roster plus him taking that next step, which I think he's capable of. Some people don't, but I think he can put it together.
It's also Levy finally getting a year. He'll have one year in under his belt as the sole guy on the offense. He doesn't have the head coach to back him up and be a two brain system where they're putting something together. He's the one guy doing it with his assistants, but he's running the offense. He'll have a year under his belt, because he also needs to. I think we can agree that there were some games where the play calling wasn't amazing, and we talked about it in our last video when we covered one of our last videos when we covered the Cheez-It Bowl. There was, in that game, was kind of a summary of the entire season. There was a big gap of time where Oklahoma went scoreless. And that's a problem. If Oklahoma can just score consistently through all 4 quarters, they'll be good.
Yeah, and calling games is an art. It's not black and white. I mean, it's not easy, cut and dry. It's an art, and I think that's critical for him being on his own. He went through a lot of growing pains, as did Brent Venables and the rest of the staff. I mean, we got to remember for where this staff is in their new positions, not Coach B, but when you look at like a Miguel Chavis and you look at a Jay Valai, I mean, Jay Valai is still really young. And you look at Brent Venables, I mean, a lot of these guys are really young in their positions. So they had growing pains as well. So enough on that. I mean, I'm sure some people have been dropping some comments, whether they're watching the premiere live or in this video after the fact. I'm sure people are dropping some comments. I'm curious to see. Maybe we're both biased. Maybe we're both homers, but that's just my gut. I think it's critical for Oklahoma's success. But at the end of the day, if Gabriel doesn't take that next step, we've got Jackson Arnold behind him, not Davis Bevel anymore. So that in itself is an upgrade.
God, yeah, it
So
is.
yeah. So we can move on unless you have anything to add to that. Okay. So Oklahoma on Thursday picked up a commitment along the offensive line. It's a transfer, Caleb Shaffer. He's from Miami, Ohio. I think he's a second team All MAC player. He's an interior offensive lineman coming in to compete for where Chris Murray played, and obviously where Robert Conjal came in and played in relief. He's 6'5", 333 pounds. He's from Carmel, Indiana. Big guy. He played as a true freshman. He's got a COVID year because he came in the 2019 season was his first year. So he's got a COVID year. He's a grad transfer. He's got 2 years of eligibility for this year and next year, which I think is big. And he comes in, brings in a lot of experience at the MAC level. But he's got the size. I mean, 6'5", 333 for the interior offensive line is pretty strong. And I know Oklahoma is recruiting Matt Lee from UCF, and they're trying to bring in some more depth and quality of competition to backfill or compete for a starting spot between Savion Byrd, McCade Mettauer, and others of that sort. What do you think about this addition? I think they're going to still try to take one more offensive lineman. Could that be Matt Lee? I'm not sure.
Hold on, I almost spoke with being muted. I think it's important. We needed more competition in the interior of the line. We've talked about it a few times. I mentioned it whenever we were going through like the brunt of recruiting in the summer. We have recruited a lot of tackles this year and in the last class. Joshua Bates is really the only one that is designated as an interior offensive lineman when it comes to recruiting from the high school level. So realistically, if those guys are only sticking to tackle, which is probably not happening, I'm sure one or two will get shifted to the inside. We're going to need some help in the interior of the line. This also makes it so there's competition. Now McCade Mettauer, even though he is the returning starter at the guard position, is he going to be able to keep his job when he has a little bit more competition with a guy like Caleb Shaffer? He is a big boy, like you said, 333 pounds. That is a large human being that will be very, very helpful, especially when it comes to opening up holes and making sure that Dylan Gabriel has a little bit more security in front of him. Because I'm sure a lot of you guys saw, especially early on in the season, it seemed like Dylan was way too worried about what was happening at the on the offensive line that he forgot to look downfield occasionally. I don't know if this guy could be a day one a starter next year, but he clearly has the confidence that he feels like he could be, because he only has, I think he only has 1 year of eligibility left. I know you mentioned his COVID year, but he played as a true freshman, played in 2021 and in 2022. So even without COVID, I think he only has 1 year left in eligibility.
Well, yeah, maybe you're right, because he's not going to redshirt this year. Yeah, he
Mm-mm.
didn't redshirt yet. You know what? You're right. You're right.
So he expects himself to come in and compete from the very beginning. And we have Chris Murray's spot, who's pretty much open for competition since he left. Andrew Rain went through surgery. He played guard at Miami of Ohio. But could he shift into the center position? Is he smart enough? Can he snap the ball accurately to Dylan? That'll be something that they work on throughout camp. But really, he's got at least 2 spots to compete for. with the guard positions. Maybe even I doubt he'll go out to tackle. I feel like he's a little bit too big, probably not agile enough. But fuck, if they can shave some weight off of him and get him to shift his feet a little faster, I mean that's always possible. Really, the entire offensive line is up for grabs. Maybe outside of the center spot, assuming Andrew Rain has a quick recovery and can start camp. Let's just say like halfway through spring ball.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess there is a world where if he is second string, they could redshirt him and
They
then he
could.
could be there for next year. I didn't even think about that. I just, most freshmen redshirt, you know what I'm
They
saying?
do.
And not most freshmen play all 12 games like he did. And so that, I mean, that has to mean something. Do I think he comes in and starts? I don't know. But he will come in and at least push for that starting spot, whether it's him, Bird, Met Tower, and anyone else that they bring in through the transfer portal. And if someone does go down for injury, you've got at least experience behind, and it's not like a true freshman or someone with no experience playing at the power. I guess it's not power five level, but at least the collegiate level. So can't complain. You always want big guys. I mean, here at Two Plane Sports, that's why the name is Two Plane Sports. We need so many big guys that they have to take two planes for away games. For anyone that's new here that does not know that the origin of the name, there you go. I'm trying to
The bigger
let
the
everyone
better.
know. Yeah, definitely. So moving off the offensive line, and I will actually, before we move off, Matt Lee, I think in our last video that we released Wednesday, he was scheduled to visit Oklahoma on Thursday. So from my understanding, that visit is happening and has happened. Assume, I don't know when he's leaving or whatever. So he's on campus, or he was on campus. Hopefully, maybe OU picks him up as well. Bring in two transfer guards. You've got McCade Mettauer and Savion Byrd to compete. You got four guys to compete for two spots. I mean, you can't ask for much more. So moving on to the wide receiver position, we've kind of alluded to this position, talking about, um, you know, Marvin Mims. What's he going to do? I mean, that's seems to be the topic of conversation. Dylan Gabriel's coming back, so he's got his quarterback coming back. I personally think, I've already said it earlier, I think he will and he should come back. Do you agree with me?
Yep.
Yeah. So I hope he does, because he brings in a lot of experience and he can really open up the offense. But OU's recruiting wide receivers like it's a position of need, while some people, I know Trav, when he was on, he was kind of laid out why it should not be a need for Oklahoma, but it seems like Oklahoma is dead set on recruiting it as a need and will take one, maybe even two wide receivers. So Oklahoma hosted a guy by the name of Tyrone Broden from Bowling Green. He had 32 catches, 506 yards, and 7 touchdowns, so just under 16 yards a catch. The most exciting thing about him is he's 6'7". And do you know of a 6'7" wide receiver that burned us not so long ago?
Yeah. I think I recall one or two. One of our co-hosts said he sucked, and then we ended up getting toasted by him for 200 yards.
Yeah, imagine that. So he's 6'7". He obviously is a massive human being and is a problem to match up with. I mean, you have a hard time matching up against a tight end who's 6'7", let alone a wide receiver that's 6'7". What do you think about Tyrone? Obviously, he came on campus. He must be interested in Oklahoma, and definitely Oklahoma's interested because they offered him. And if you go on his Twitter, he's got offers from a ton of Power Five schools. I mean, every Power Five school, when you see a 6'7" wide receiver, that's my guy.
Yeah, I think Johnny Wilson made them even more popular than they were before. I think he'd be an important addition. I don't know. We were talking about it before, and I think you feel a little bit higher on Tyrone than I do. His stats are okay. I wouldn't say they're amazing, but they're not terrible either. You brought up a point when we were talking about that too. He was at Bowling Green, so it's not like they're putting up a ton of yards in the passing game. They were a very good team overall. So that maybe that's something that could have held him back. You mentioned it. The fact that he's 6'7" is what is really the most intriguing thing, and probably to a lot of people, because we did just see Johnny Wilson absolutely burn us. And if Webby can use Tyrone, if they were able to add on Tyrone to this offense, and he can use him in a similar fashion that Florida State uses Johnny Wilson, this offense no matter who the quarterback is. I don't care if you think Dylan Gabriel sucks or if Jackson Arnold's a guy back there. The quarterback will have a new favorite target because he's going to catch the ball over almost anyone. And defenses will have to double cover him because he's probably taller than like 80% of the DBs. Probably 99% of the DBs
I
covering
was
him
going
are
to
going
say
to be shorter than
99.
him. I don't know how many 6'7" football
I don't
players there
know.
are in
I
general.
don't know a single defensive back that is 6'7".
If they're out there, you guys can comment his name, but I'm pretty sure like 99.9 of the guys might not be able to cover him just size wise. So he's got that at least on most DBs. That opens up the offense a lot too. I mean, you saw it in the Florida State game. Johnny Wilson was getting open in the zone. He was getting open in man to man, no matter who was on him, no matter if the DB was getting safety help, he was getting open. And if not, Jordan Travis was just throwing it up there because he's going to be bigger than everyone. I mean, and if he comes in, I hope they do find a role for him because the last thing I would want is to have a guy like Tyrone ride the bench and not find time to get him on because it's not like we don't have tall receivers already on this team. We have Jaden Gibson and Nick Anderson, both are like 6'3" or 6'4", respectively. Like there's big guys on this team. They just haven't been used yet. And though they were true freshmen, maybe they'll find a role in their redshirt freshman year. But Tyrone is a guy that could come in and, if used appropriately, would be the reason Dylan Gabriel makes this team looks better next year, or this team goes to the next level and wins 3 or 4 more games.
And I think, yeah, because as we talked about, I mean, playing at Bowling Green's not a terrific football team by any means or elite quarterback play, but what he has done, and he has 2 years of eligibility. I double checked myself. He redshirted in 2019, had the COVID year, played 21 and played last year. So he's got a couple years of eligibility coming in wherever he does end up deciding to go. But this year and last year, he put up 506 yards this year and 596 yards last year. So he's put up consistently over 500 yards in back-to-back seasons with probably subpar quarterback play, for like a Oklahoma standards. You bring him in, he gets placed into a system that favors wide receivers, a matchup nightmare. Because if he comes in, and assuming Marvin Mims comes back, I mean, him on the outside, Mims, and then you've got Jalil Farouk running around, and you've got elite running backs coming out of the backfield, and you've got Stogner. I mean, think about that. I mean, Stogner's a big dude as well. Defensive backs and defenses are going to have an extremely hard time defending this. And I'm not just saying just because of it, he's 6'7", but I mean, he's talented. And I think he could be elevated to the next level at Oklahoma. And whether he chooses Oklahoma or not, I'm not sure. But the fact that he's on campus, and I believe he was on campus Wednesday or Thursday, somewhere in there. So he came for a visit. Hopefully Oklahoma can lock him down. I mean, you scroll through his Twitter. I mean, he's got offers everywhere. So at the end of the day, he's not desperate for a spot. If he feels like he's got an opportunity, I would imagine he'll pull the trigger. But we're going to find out soon. That's the greatest thing about this. As we talked about on Wednesday's video, this is not going to be a Peyton Bowen situation that you're going to be hearing us talk about him for the next 3 months, or well, I guess next year, basically. That's how long we talked about Peyton Bowen. So, do you have anything to add about Broden?
Nope. No. Hopefully we get him just because he's 6'7", but it wouldn't hurt my feelings if he didn't become a Sooner either.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it is what it is. I mean, probably a guy that we're both more excited about, and kind of some backstory on J.Michael Strudevant. He entered in the transfer portal, and for anyone that, and this was a little bit before Two Planes really started, but I've been following recruiting for a long time, at least 3 or 4 years now, like in depth. And Oklahoma wanted, and at the time wanted, J.Michael Strudevant. Strudevant's from the Flower Mound area in Texas, an electric receiver. I mean, he was really good in high school. And what ended up happening, he was part of the 2021 class. And I don't know if everyone remembers, but we kind of talked about it before we started on the show and pieced it together because I jogged my memory. So in the 2021 class, who did we have? We had Mario Williams, Jalil Farouk, and Cody Jackson. Those were the three receivers in the 21 class that ended up signing. And then you had in the 22 class, you remember we had a terrific trio of wide receivers that never even put pen to paper. Neither one of them. You had Luther Burden, Jordan Hudson,
And Talon
and
Shetron.
Talon Stretchern. All three of those guys committed so early in the recruiting cycle, basically just to have a placeholder and put their name and secure a roster spot. Well, at that time, whenever you already have three guys committed in the 21 class and you have three guys in the 22 class, the previous staff felt like they could not spare another scholarship, a seventh scholarship between the two classes for the wide receiver position. So J.Michael kind of got left into the cold per se. And that's kind of what I recall. And someone that is watching this might have a better recollection of that recruitment. But anyway, that's why Oklahoma ended up not getting him, from my understanding. And then he went out to Cal and he redshirted last year in the 21 season at Cal. And this year was his first year playing. And he played every game. He had 65 catches, 755 yards, and 7 touchdowns as a redshirt freshman, 6'3", 205 pounds. And he played for a team that ended up being 4-8 and 2-7 in their conference. So not a very good team by any means. You pointed out that they lost to Colorado, which at the time, I've been saying Colorado's the worst Power 5 program, at least this season they were. J.Michael is a guy that if we only could get one, I would want him. I mean, he's coming in, he's got 3 more years of eligibility. He already proved it on the field as a redshirt freshman. And 755 yards as a redshirt freshman year is elite. What do you think?
I agree. And it's the way that he racked up all those yards. He wasn't just going out there and he didn't have one enormous game that really boosted his stats. He was contributing in every single game for Cal. And like you said, they weren't a great team. They were Colorado's only win this season. That they would have beat Colorado. They did lose in overtime. So at least I guess they lost in heartbreaking fashion, I guess, but can't lose to Colorado. In that game, it seems like Colorado's defense did their job though, because this guy was held to 45 yards, and that was tied for the lowest of all season. In every other game, he had about 50 yards and at least 50 yards in every game. Consistently produced them on the touchdown side, 7 touchdowns for the year. And like you said, the fact that he's young and has had that type of production in his redshirt season shows that he's putting in the work and is able to separate himself from the pack, both from the DB and from the wide receiver room. He has the talent and the work ethic to do what it takes to be successful. It would be awesome to have that kind of guy in the 2 deep or even in the starter role. But again, I think for the most part, the guys coming in, it's hard to imagine them in a starter role, because assuming Marvin Mims comes back, whose spot are they taking? Are they taking Drake's spot? Are they taking Jalil's spot? I don't think so. I mean, maybe Drake's spot. I don't think they're taking Jalil's spot. I definitely don't think they're taking Marvin's spot. So I don't know if I should take the indication with OU pretty much offering every wide receiver that enters the portal that they don't think Marvin Mims comes back. Maybe that's what we should be expecting, but it's going to be interesting. If Marvin doesn't come back, this dude might be the guy that gets plugged in day one for Oklahoma, because he's that talented.
Yeah, and maybe if Marvin does come back, maybe they only take one. And if it's just one, Strudevant is the one that you want. And it's interesting because I don't think anyone really knows what Mims is doing, and I don't think OU really knows at this point. And maybe they are covering themselves and protecting themselves. I just hope that he doesn't hold what happened against Oklahoma, because it's a previous staff. This staff has no prior history as far as, recruiting him, from my understanding. I mean, obviously Venables wasn't recruiting him, but you've got no prior history to the actual people at the program. I certainly hope that he's not going to hold it against Oklahoma. I don't think he will, but sometimes some guys think that once a program burns you, you're just done. with that team. So I certainly hope they get him. If you see him come on campus for a visit, I think that means Oklahoma's in a pretty darn good spot. I don't know if he's planning to visit, but he's naturally, as soon as he entered the portal, I was like, Oklahoma's going to kick the tires on him, I'd imagine.
Especially at this point, if he's a guy that isn't planning on taking a semester off or finishing his academic semester at Cal, he'll be making a decision in the next week so that he's enrolled at Oklahoma or whatever school he goes to next. So if he visits OU, given that they also only have a few more days left in being able to host officially transfer guys, it would be pretty good for Oklahoma and a good sign, at least for his recruitment and potentially landing in Norman.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if they get Tyrone Broden, I would not be upset either. Honestly, either one of these guys, I'd be happy with. Both would be fantastic, but I just don't know how much room is there, and there's only so many snaps to go around to everyone. I mean, you got to also think about like Jaden Gibson and guys that are coming in this freshman class, Jaquez Petaway and things like that. So
Ellie Bunkley Shelton, JJ Hester, Nick Anderson. I mean, I think it's going to be hard to keep Jaquez Petaway off the field. That dude is really talented.
he's good enough to potentially play. And then you even talked about in the last episode, Jacoby Johnson has to be ready to play wide receiver if he needs to, maybe on a gadget play. So there's going to be a lot of competition. And I think that's what this staff is doing and why they're taking such big classes, I guess, way bigger than what originally Lincoln Riley and the previous staff did. They have a different way of building programs, just like Alabama and Georgia and LSU. All these big schools take these giant classes because you want as much competition at each position as possible, and that's what they're doing.
Competition. I think that's what Oklahoma fans should like about this regime so far. The success has not been there on the field. Don't get us wrong. We get it. They sucked, or at least for Oklahoma standards, they sucked last year. But we were talking about it before when we were trying to figure out what happened with Schrudeman in the past. Oklahoma only got 16 kids out of high school in 2021. Like, that's really unacceptable. I mean, they ended up being the number 6 class, I think, that year overall, but they also brought in 8 transfers, and one of them was Michael Turk, who ended up being pretty pivotal this year. But you can't have that. You can't build a successful program long term and have so few kids come out of high school, especially now with the transfer portal being an option. Most of those guys are gone.
And the turnover rate when you do that is significant. It's just, yeah, I like the way that they're building this. I mean, they're bringing a lot of transfers as well in this class, but they're having to do it to kickstart the revamp of this program. So, but that's all I've got. Do you have anything else to add, or do you want to roll into the end of video challenge?
In the video challenge, let's see, going to the weekend. I think we might have one more episode. We will have one more episode before the national championship, but I want to get ahead of it. Who is going to raise the national championship trophy this year? Is it the Horny Toads or the Dogs? I'm going to go TCU just because I think it'd be cool.
I hope TCU does, but my gut's telling me the Dogs. I mean, it's hard to honestly see it otherwise.
Pick against them. They are pretty talented, but yeah. Duggan and Sonny Dykes are pulling off some interesting stuff this year. They've gotten lucky in some games, but can't really say they got lucky last game because they played almost a full-powered Michigan team. At least the Michigan team that beat Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, they're a good team, and at the end of the day, they showed it, and they're 13-1 for a reason. So
go Frogs.
No, they're 12-1. Excuse me, they're 12-1, right? No, yeah, they're 13-1. I was right. They're 13-1. I don't know. It's late.
Numbers are hard this far in the season. They're really good. They're in the national championship.
They're really good. So, all right, if you made it this far, like the video, turn the notification bell, and subscribe to the channel, and do the in-video challenge. Let us know who's going to win the national championship Monday night. And then also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. And we will catch you guys either Sunday or Monday. Hopefully we have some more good recruiting news to discuss and some various other student related stuff. And we will catch you guys then.